Some people contacted me after viewing the video on the National Adi Shankara mission. Recently, this video was uploaded about the launch of the National Adi Shankara mission. The questions that were posed to me were that they could not understand the motivation or the reasons for this National Adi Shankara mission. In their view, the biography of Shankara was extremely well known. It was extremely well documented. The places connected with him had been clearly identified. Temples and monuments had been built at Kaladi, and there was really nothing much more to go look for his maternal and paternal home and the associated temples. So I responded to these people saying that actually this was a very nice discussion. There was nothing, there was no animus or any of that tone in the discussion. It's a very congenial, amicable discussion. I countered and said that if everything about Shankara was known, how come we do not have a single ancient national monument to Shankara in this country? When I say monument, ancient monument, I refer to any place, any temple, shrine, structure, house, edifice, group of images that have been connected back to Shankara through archaeological or indological evidence, hard evidence. And that is why I said we need to have a national Adi Shankara mission. The primary reason being we know very little about Shankara. That left these people who had raised these queries even more confused, and I promised that I would answer their queries very thoroughly. When you look at the source of Shankara's life, it has so far been the Shankara Vijayas. There are over a dozen Shankara Vijayas, and these, were all found as manuscripts. So here is one manuscript that you see, paper manuscript. They could be in Nagari, Devanagari. They could be in other languages such as Telugu. Okay, but primarily they were all in Sanskrit. Devanagari, Sanskrit written in Devanagari. So there are several Shankara Vijayas, Vyasachala, Chidvilasya, and others. A prominent one among them is the Govindanatha's Shankara Vijaya, which is also known as the Kerala Shankara Vijaya because it hails from Kerala. The most well-known Shankara Vijaya is the Madhaviya Shankara Vijaya, which was published by Anand Ashram in Pune in 1930s. This particular Shankara Vijaya has been translated by Swami Sri Tapasyananda of the Ramakrishna Math, translated into English. So there are, as I said, a plethora, at least a dozen, if not more, Shankara Vijayas. These Shankara Vijayas, though, have been composed or been written by poets or writers, that is, those who basically write literature. Right? And they have all been written down between the 16th and the 20th centuries. So they are several centuries, far disconnected from the time of Shankara. And that is one of the primary reasons we do not have a great deal of accurate information about Shankara. These Shankara Vijayas do not fall in the genre of Itihasa and Purana. They, at best, can be considered to be marginal sources of history, though they are the preeminent guide in the case of Adi Shankara. These Shankara Vijayas were studied and compared by a very great individual by the name of Dr. W.R. Antarkar. His PhD thesis, this is his PhD thesis, which was republished later. It is entitled Shankara Vijayas, a comparative and critical study. Right? It was originally conducted, his thesis was conducted at the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune, which formed at that point in 1960s, formed a part of the University of Pune. Dr. W.R. Antarkar traveled the length and breadth of our nation, collected various manuscripts, that is, he copied down in this form, copied down various manuscripts in various, from different libraries, manuscript libraries across India. He also went and saw many of the places connected with Adi Shankara and wrote about them in his monumental PhD thesis on the Shankara Vijayas. Now, if you look, for example, at page 200 or 201 onwards, you will see, I will just hold this up and try to bring the camera down. You will see a bunch of lists, okay, in each of these pages. You will see a bunch of lists. Okay. These lists refer to the places which Sankara is said to have visited. And so there are many lists from each of the Shankara Vijayas. He gives us lists of places that Shankara is said to have visited. And the list of these places, some of the names, some of the places are generally agreed upon in Shankara Vijayas. But many of the places, there is no agreement of the places that he visited. Mr. Antarkar points out that there is a lot of disagreement between the Shankara Vijayas about the life of Shankara. In addition to that, if you look at the Madhavya Shankara Vijayan, in the second canto, it talks about the birth of Shankara as having taken place in Kaladi. The way it describes this is that there is a place, there is a temple called Vrishachala, close to which Purna river flows, and Kaladi is a village in that region or in that area. Now, if you look at the map, Kaladi and the Purna or Periyar river are more than 50 kilometers away from Trishur or Trishivapperu, as is the classical name of Trishur. So, Swami Sri Tapasyananda has a footnote in the second canto where he says that the description of the Purna river flowing close to Shur and the Vadakanathan temple, is a geographical inaccuracy. So there are inaccuracies within the Shankara Vijayas. There are inconsistencies within the Shankara Vijayas, which Dr. Antarkar has spoken about in his thesis. And in addition to that, there are differences of opinion about Shankara from the various Shankara Vijayas. And I think there are more than 20 to 28 Shankara Vijayas in all. So you can imagine the amount of confusion. For the last 150 years or so, may not be 150 years, 1878 onwards. So close to 140 years or so, these Shankara Vijayas have been dissected and beaten to death by various scholars. But we have to give credit to Dr. Antarkar because he is the one who published critical editions of several of these Shankar Vijayas in the Bharati Vidya Bhavan journal and then studied them in his thesis. Really a very monumental achievement, you should say. But I think you get the general idea that the Shankara Vijayas are late, they're disconnected from the time of Shankara. There are inaccuracies within them, there are inconsistencies within them, there are disagreements within them. So, in a sense, we know very little about Shankara, and the Shankara Vijayas can be taken as a sort of a generic guide, a general framework to study Shankara, but they cannot be taken as reliable uh, historical sources. That is the primary difficulty facing researchers connected with Shankara. So much so that in a talk at the last workshop on the historiography of Shankara, a colleague of mine, Dr. Sriram Narayan Swami Iyer, wrote and presented a paper which was entitled The Enigmas in the Shankara Vijayas, Some Questions and Answers. So, sum and substance is from the Shankara Vijayas, we cannot extract reliable information that tells us about Shankara. So people point to me and say, okay, there is this inaccuracies, inconsistency, lack of reliability on the Shankara Vijayas, then everything about Kaladi and the monuments, etc., are already in place. And so, what else is there? Find about Shankara or know about Shankara. Now, I will go through the various places in Kaladi. There was no bridge at one point in Kaladi until the year 1963. Sri Shankara Bridge across the river Periyar was built in 1963 and has been in use since then. It looks over the point where the river turns, and the turning of the river is attributed to Sri Shankara. So we have this river, this bridge being something constructed only in the last 50, 60 years. What I sat and thought about was how did the Sringeri Acharyas decide about Kaladi being the birthplace or the most important place connected with that of Shankara. And it led me to the Sri Krishna temple there, which is well known, the Trikaladi temple or the Sri Krishna temple of Kaladi. The hereditary trustees of this temple are the Kapulli Mana and the Talayattumpulli Mana, two families associated with Shankara, whose descendants live in and around Kaladi. This temple, I'm told, had a fire in the 13th century where a couple of walls were destroyed and it was rebuilt. So, at the very least, this particular temple dated from the 13th century or somewhere earlier around that time, right? What I imagine, what I conjectured is how did the Shingeri Acharyas actually find out about Kaldi? There is a story about it which I will tell you very shortly. But I would like to point out that the most important piece of evidence was the fact that the three families connected to Shankara, the Kaipillimana, the paternal family of Shankara, the Kapillimana, and the Thalayattumbillimana, two families associated with Shankara, all lived in and around Kaladi. And that their descendants essentially held held up the living tradition, meaning they are the living tradition of Sri Shankara. This temple is basically a reflection of that living tradition of two of the families, the Kapilli and the Kalyantumbilimana. But these three families being there, I think would have given the vital information to Shingeri Acharya that there is a living tradition of Shankara in and around Kaladi, which made them designate Kaladi as an important place associated with Shankara. Subsequently, they built this this temple dedicated to Shankara at Kaladi, and you can see them. They have also marked the various places, the Mudala Kadavu or the Crocodile Ghat, which you can see here from in this photograph. But I think it is the Sri Krishna temple there which likely gave them the clue, complemented by generic information. As I pointed out, there is some inaccuracy even about the location of the Purna River and Trishur and Kaladi, etc. That notwithstanding, the information that the acharyas would have relied on is the presence of these families and the living tradition due to these three families. Subsequently, the Kanchi Matha in the 80s, 1980s, has built a monument to Shankara in Kaladi. What we can say is that our acharyas laid claim to Sringeri, laid claim to Kaladi, my apologies, laid claim to Kaladi, and they opened the gates of Kaladi for us, the devotees. Again, to repeat, our acharyas laid claim to Kaladi and opened the gates for us, the mere devotees, and it is our turn now to go and explore within Kaladi and find the ancient evidence and hand that evidence over as our offering to Bhagavad Pada Sri Adi Shankara and his Shankara Parampara. I mean, I'm not sure whether you are convinced, but I will like to tell you some more. This is about what I said was the quest for Kaladi. As mentioned earlier, in the 1900s, there was no bridge in Kaladi. Very difficult to access the place. Kaladi was fairly wooded, meaning there were a lot of trees and undergrowth and bushes. Very difficult to move around. No communication in those days. Maybe some telegram and some letter, which probably took forever to reach. And in these difficult circumstances, the Shringeri Matham had deputed one former Diwan of the Mysore state, Sheshadri Iyer, to go and search for Kaladi. He went to Kerala and came back with the information that there were three places known as Kaladi. One near Thiruvananthapuram, one Kaladi which is near Aluva or Ernakulam, and the third one actually is the Kaladi near Shukapuram or Panniyur, that is in the border between Palakkad and Malappuram. In that area, there is another Kaladi. In reality, there are at least another two more places known as Kaladi in Kerala. Now, this information regarding the three Kaladis and Diwan Seshadri Iyer, etc., are written about in a, a real masterpiece, Kaladi, Birthplace of Shankara, by Sri K.R. Venkatraman. A masterpiece about Kaladi, a short monograph about Kaladi, which is unfortunately out of print. Another important source is the Malayalam book by Dr. K. Kunjanni Raja, Dr. K. Kunjanni Raja, the renowned Sanskrit scholar and former director of the Government Oriental Manuscripts Library, Adaya. He too talks about the families living there, about Kaladi, etc. Now, what we know from from Sri K.R. Venkatraman's book and this video, which is called Kaladi, the Triumph of Faith Over Time, which is available on YouTube, is about these three Kaladis, etc. And in addition to that, it speaks about the great the great role played by the Maharaja of Travancore at that time, Moolam Tirunal Ramavarma VI, who reigned there in Travancore. He acquired the lands from the Kapilli Mana, and he then subsequently handed them over to the Chingeri Matha for building uh, of the temple and matha, etc., for Sri Shankara. This is an old photograph from the 1900s, which uh, shows the consecration ceremony done at the turn of the last century. What I would like to say is that it is very odd that the Maharaja had formed the Kerala State Archaeological Department in 1908, and the great scholar, Indologist, and Sanskrit scholar T.A. Gopinath Rao was installed as the first superintending archaeologist of the Kerala State Archaeological Department. That was in 1908. Now, the activities of finding Kaladi by Diwan Seshadri began in 1904, and by the time the consecration was done, it was 1910. So, the Kerala State Archaeological Department, I mean, this is a photograph of current headquarters, Sundarvilasam Palace of the Kerala State Archaeological Department. The Kerala State Archaeological Department was just being formed, and by that time, this quest for Kaladi had already taken shape and had been completed. Because it was puzzling me as to why the Maharaja of Travancore would have not asked T.A. Gopinath Rao to go and search for all the ancient evidence regarding Shankara in and around Kaladi and inform him about the same. And as I thought about it, I realized that for the Maharaja of Travancore, I mean, there is actually the current, the previous, previous descendant and the Maharaja, the last Maharaja of Travancore, who has given an interview in this video. For them, it appears that it was more a matter of faith, a diktat from their guru, saying that we have to find Kaladi and we have to build a temple honoring Shankara there. So they took it as orders from their guru, and they faithfully executed uh, his instructions in basically developing Kaladi. So it was thus quite obvious as to why the Maharaja did not um, ask Gopinath Rao to go and conduct a thorough archaeological survey there. because for him, for the Maharaja, it was a matter of faith more than a matter of archaeology. Okay, so I think that I have told you as much as I have read, as I have seen, and as I have thought about uh, the discovery of Kaladi. I do not want to belittle in any way or cast aspersions or in any way denigrate the discovery of Kaladi because it was a very difficult task under trying circumstances which was executed by the Shringeri Acharyas. So we have to give them due credit for what they have done. But I think the time has come for us to find the ancient information which lies strewn around, sort of lies strewn about in Kaladi, and make that as an offering to Bhagavad Pada and his Shankara Parampara. That it should be our role. What do we expect to, I mean, that is what kind of ancient evidence? We have just started getting ancient structures, ancient images, ancient temples, ruins in both Kaladi, which is the place of the maternal home of Shankara, as well as in Veliyanad, which is where the maternal home, the Melpadurmana, or the maternal home of Shankara is, where he is said to have been born as per the tradition of Kerala. We have just started uncovering this evidence. So I will wrap up this video by saying that it has been a great task to find Kaladi. This is certainly the place where the Kaipullimana, the Kapullimana and the Talayatupullimana, three families resided in ultimately and continue to reside in. And due to their living tradition, we can say that there is a connection, Sankara. There is a lot of hard evidence strewn about even today in and around Kaladi. And it is our job, and also in Veliyanad, which is where maternal home of Shankara is, it is our role to go and find this information and formalize the connection to Shankara. This is the first part of the video series on the motivation. I will stop there because it is getting very lengthy, and I will now speak to you about the motivation in the next video. Thank you very much.